Now I will be discussing with you about digital preservation, which has been divided into two parts. Presently we will discuss about part 1. So let us begin with having a look at the objectives of digital preservation. The objective of this module is to impart knowledge on the aspects of digital preservation, that is the need, relevance, problems and challenges of digital preservation, principles that guide digital preservation actions, factors that are involved in long-term digital preservation strategies, and impact of intellectual property rights and digital rights management on digital preservation. The widespread transition of knowledge from print to electronic format began in 1980s and with floppies. These floppies disk and floppy drives required to read them having almost disappeared completely now. However, information recorded on them is still relevant to libraries and its users. Likewise, CD-ROM, DVD-ROM and magnetic tape cartridges that are used as low-cost storage media in libraries may also move towards extinction as storage technology evolves. Acquisition of electronic content in libraries are increasing every day with addition of new resources that are born digital through different channels of communication like e-journals, e-books and online bibliographic databases subscribed by libraries from publishers, vendors and aggregators. And furthermore, individual institutions themselves are producing their research output and other knowledge resources in electronic format. Libraries with their mandate to provide long-term access to resources available with them are concerned that if the media and the technology used for preserving digital content become obsolete, the libraries may fail to provide access to its digital data that are preserved for posterity. As such, the issues of preservation of digital contents are a matter of concern with technologies, standards and formats in continuous flux of change. In the past few years, significant developments have been made in digital preservation with several new projects and programs involving national and international institutions of higher repute. So, libraries, archives and other cultural institutions are eagerly looking forward to adopt and adapt tenets of digital preservation with an aim to avoid risk of loss of digital contents due to rapid changes in technology. And preservation of digital data requires substantial new investments and commitments by organizations, institutions and agencies to adopt its economic and administrative policies for funding and managing the digital preservation practice. Digital preservation is a series of managed activities necessary to ensure continued access to digital information for as long as necessary, and it involves the planning, resource allocation and application of preservation methods and technologies to ensure that digital information of continuing value remains accessible and usable. It combines policies, strategies and actions to ensure access to reformatted and born digital content regardless of the challenges of media, failure and technological change. Some of the eminent personalities defined digital preservation as the Wikipedia defines digital preservation as the series of managed activities necessary to ensure continued access to digital information for as long as necessary. Kirchhoff defines digital preservation as a series of management policies and activities necessary to ensure the enduring usability, authenticity, discoverability and accessibility of content over the very long term. Kelly defines digital preservation as storage, maintenance and accessibility of digital object, which includes any digital material such as a text document, an image file, a multimedia CD-ROM or a database over long term, usually as a consequence of applying one or more digital preservation strategies. Now let us discuss about the need of digital preservation. Due to hardware and software becoming obsolete in very short period of time, its incompatibility of different versions, fading knowledge of how to use older hardware and software, aging and decaying storage media and loss of information leads to need of digital preservation of the different types of digital materials. The need of digital preservation may be due to exponential growth in digital information available in libraries and its ephemeral nature, increased complexity of digital objects incorporating text, images, audio, video, GIS formats, etc., and the increasing dependency on software required to read and use them. Rapid reflux of technology, standards and formats, multiplicity of standards and formats, absence of widely accepted standards that will assure access over time, need to ensure usability, durability and intellectual integrity of the digital information, and rapid changes and obsolescence of storage media, example limited lifespan of storage media. Now let us discuss about the problems and challenges of digital preservation. So digital preservation problems are associated with the preservation of physical media on which the bits and bytes of electronic information reside, and also the refreshing technology from old to new, and addressing the integrity and authenticity of the information originally recorded, and various reasons mentioned such as due to dynamic nature of digital contents, machine dependency, fragility of the media, technological obsolescence, and shorter lifespan of digital media, formats and styles, copyright and intellectual property rights issues. Now let us discuss in detail about these issues. Preservation in analog, let us discuss first about dynamic nature of digital contents. Preservation in analog world involves static objects like printed documents, manuscripts and other artifacts. Collecting and storing these items in some form is simple and straightforward process, while preserving digital content requires consideration in terms of meaning and purpose of preservation. Digital information exists in several forms and types. There are several digital documents that are true replica of these print counterpart, such as books, reports, correspondences, etc. However, there are other types of digital material that vary greatly from their traditional forms. For example, interactive web pages, geographic information systems, and virtual reality models. Websites are often dynamically changing sites. As the object grows and changes over time, new questions emerge about what it means to preserve a digital object. Internet users are all familiar with the link failure syndrome that plagues the web. Now next issue is the machine dependency. Digital contents are machine dependent. It may not be possible to access the information unless there is appropriate hardware and associated software. Access to digital contents may require specific hardware and software that were used for creating them. Since computer and storage technologies are in a continuous flux of change, the time frame available for migrating digital contents to new software or hardware is generally very short, typically 3 to 5 years as opposed to decades or even centuries that may be available for preserving traditional materials. Techno-obsolescence is considered as the greatest technical threat to ensuring continued access to the digital contents. The next issue is the fragility of the media. The storage media used for storing digital contents are inherently unstable and highly fragile because of problems inherent to magnetic and optical media that deteriorate rapidly and can fail suddenly because of exposure to heat, humidity, airborne contaminants or faulty reading and writing devices. Magnetic storage media is highly sensitive to dust, heat, humidity and other climatic conditions. Most storage devices without suitable storage conditions and proper management may deteriorate very quickly without displaying any physical characteristics of external damage. Deterioration of storage media may lead to corrupted digital files in such a fashion that it may not be easy to identify the corrupted portion of digital contents. The next issue is the technological obsolescence, which can affect hardware, software and file format. Not only computers are continuously superseded with their fast and more powerful versions, the media used to store digital contents also become obsolete in 2 or 3 years before they are replaced by newer and denser versions of that media. or by any new types of media that is smaller, denser, faster and easier to read. The digital media materials stored on older media could be lost because the hardware or software to read them may become obsolete. Although the media may physically survive for years, the technology to read and interpret it may exist for only a brief period of time. As a result, even if the storage media is retained in the best condition, it may still not be possible to access the information it contains. Obsolescence also affects software that is used to create, manage or access digital contents, since the software are being superseded by newer versions or newer generation with more capabilities. There is a constant threat of backward compatibility for digital contents that were created using older versions of software. Similarly, file formats are being superseded with new versions, and the newer versions of software may not read files in older formats. Although some file formats are largely dependent of specific software, for example ASCII and Unicode, most are tied to individual or related groups of software. Proprietary software with associated file formats represents some of the most enduring and successful software in use. Commercial software developers regularly release new versions of their software and associated file formats with added features and functionality in order to entice users to upgrade. The next issue is shorter lifespan of digital media. One of the important concerns of digital preservation is relatively short lifespan of digital media and higher rate of obsolescence of the hardware and software used for assessing the digital records. Rapid change in the IT industry and the move from science-based development to commercial development of software and hardware systems has resulted into media becoming inaccessible at a faster pace. And now let's see the issue related to formats and styles. Information contents that were earlier confined to traditional formats like books, maps, photographs and sound recordings are getting increasingly available in diversity of digital formats. New formats have emerged such as hypertext, multimedia, dynamic pages, geographic information systems and interactive video. Each format or style possesses distinct challenges relating to its encoding and compression for digital preservation. So now let's see the issues related with the copyright and intellectual property rights. Legal issues, in particular the process of obtaining copyright clearance for preservation and access of archived material, can contribute significantly to the cost and complexity of digital preservation. It is an area where the wider preservation community often needs to make its case with government and other legal legislators. Andrew Charlesworth emphasized that while a number of legal issues color contemporary approaches to and practices of digital preservation, it is arguable that intellectual property law, represented principally by copyright and its related rights, has been so far by the most dominant and often interactable influence. It is essential for those engaging in digital preservation to understand the letter of the law and to be able to identify and implement practical and pragmatic strategies for handling legal risks in the pursuit of preservation objectives. Moreover, those engaging in digital preservation need to advance a coherent and cogent message to rights holders, policymakers and the public with regard to the relationship between intellectual property law and digital preservation. It is in the long-term interest of all stakeholders that modern intellectual property law permits both the implementation of effective and efficient mechanisms of digital preservation. Now let us discuss about some of the principles of digital preservation. The preservation principles that are being practiced for preservation of analog media are also applicable to preservation in the digital world. The principles listed defines priorities for extending the life of digital information resources, which will guide digital preservation actions in maintaining the longevity, that is long-term migration strategies, accessibility with best technology and resources, selection with authenticity, significance and lasting cultural value in reflecting subject matter, quality which defines usefulness, usability, data captured and display technology, integrity and authenticity, where loss or alteration of information, and discoverability which is associated with bibliographic metadata, usability that is mechanism of current technology, sustainability, institutional commitment to manage in future. So now let us discuss about the factors of digital preservation. To provide access to its digital data that is preserved for posterity, some factors are to be looked into when working towards long-term digital preservation. The factors to be well addressed and considered are cultural, technological, legal, methodological, economic and social. Cultural factors: there is a lack of awareness amongst a large group of people within society, including planners and decision makers, about the historical value and significance of the digital documentary heritage. This in turn leads to obliviousness to perform adequate and proper keeping of those documents, with a consequent loss of heritage. Although digital information production is considered valuable, there is not enough awareness about its preservation. In 2003, a US survey carried out by the Cornell University Library found that the main menace to digital materials was the lack of policies and plans inside their institutions to carry out this task. In developing countries, the situation could be worse. So now let us see the technological factors, which are mainly related to obsolescence of computers, storage devices and media, changes in operating systems, formats, programs, interfaces, reading and reproducing devices, emerging standards, lack of interoperability among computing devices. Moreover, issues related to information security must also be addressed here. This has to do with the relationship among threats, risks, vulnerability, impacts and control measures on digital objects. Libraries with limited technologies and technological dependence factors should gear up to cope with these obsolescence and security problems. The next factor is the legal factor. Preservation of digital contents is not an easy task for libraries. It is strongly associated with legal factors such as copyrights and IPR. Some of the questions that need to be answered include: who is legally responsible for keeping every document, collection or archive for the future? Who has the legally eligible or competence to perform that task? And will it be possible to make these documents accessible in future? National libraries and archives are currently trying to balance their responsibilities of receiving, keeping and providing access to documents and the growing restrictions on distributing them, mostly in electronic formats. Methodological factors are associated with the tools and standards that are used for appraisal among the different materials, selection and disposal, logical storing and future retrieval of documents. The digital document with a simple set of descriptive metadata like author, title and keywords are not enough for proper future retrieval of digital documents. A new set of metadata that allow hyperlinks and contextualize description of document in relation with other documents, enhancing its reuse, search, linking, weighting, integration, data mining and interoperability with other programs that might be used in future. If these factors are not taken into consideration, then the technological preservation efforts will be of limited use in spite of complexity involved and cost. The next factor we will discuss is about economic factors. Preservation is an ongoing process. Therefore, current short and long term cost and funding are important issues to deal with before and during a preservation project, in order to maintain their feasibility in the long term. These include cost of digitizing, cost of scanning and or producing a digital original, cost of editing, that is to prepare, assemble, alter, adopt, refine or bring about conformity to a standard certain digital document, cost of register, to add set of metadata pertinent to the digital object, cost of storing, cost to maintain in storage devices in or offline a digital object for a given time, and cost of updating, cost to copy, update, refresh, convert and reshape digital documents to fulfill new requirements. Social factors are associated with usability, accessibility and security aspect of digital preservation. The future generation should have effective and efficient access to the information that are preserved. There is no use in preserving digital documents if no one or just a few users will have access to preserved documents. Assuming copyrights, privacy rights and other legal issues are observed, the future challenge will be how to make this information available to as many people as possible through several generations. The social issues should be addressed and taken into consideration while defining digital preservation policy. So now let us discuss some of the digital preservation strategies. The preserved digital object should be identical in all essential respects to the digital object. It is important to understand what is essential in order to protect those aspects of a record which are essential and to measure the success of preservation interventions. UNESCO's guidelines for the preservation of digital heritage group have categorized these strategies as short-term, medium to long-term, investment, alternative and combinations. Short-term strategies, digital preservation strategies are like to work for a short period of time only. These strategies include bitstream copying, refreshing, replication technology, preservation or computer museum, backwards compatibility and version migration. Medium to long-term strategies proposed for medium to long-term preservation are likely to work for a long period of time. Such strategies should be used for digital materials that are likely to be of value for a long period of time. Medium to long-term preservation strategies include migration, that is one computer generation to subsequent generations, emulation, that is maintaining functionality, simplifying and eliminates old hardware, canonicalization, that is manages integrity and authenticity from one format to another. Investment strategies, that is investment preservation strategies, which involves the investment of efforts at the time of archiving digital materials. Such strategies include restricting formats and standards, reliance on standards, data abstraction and structuring, encapsulation, software engineering and universal virtual computer. Alternative strategies for digital preservation includes taking analog backup of documents which may be in print or microfilm and recovering the data from obsolete digital media. Alternative strategies include analog backups, that is conversion of digital objects into analog form, and digital archaeology or data recovery, that is retrieving data from obsolete software or hardware. Now combinations. In digital preservation, no single strategy is appropriate for all data types, situations or institutions. A number of strategies may therefore be necessary to cover the range of objects and characteristics to be preserved. For example, standards such as TIFF for image collections, eventual migration to other standard formats. Then VERS strategy couples the use of standards like PDF or XML and migration of XML encoded metadata in the future. Persistent archives use data abstraction with the view to eventual migration, and the universal virtual computer, that is UVC approach, combines data abstraction with rules for migration of data objects. Now let us see digital rights management. In digital rights management, preserving data with digital material is arguably more complex and significant than for traditional media, and if not addressed properly, it can hinder or even prevent preservation process. To manage the digital rights, the issues to be looked upon are legal deposit, copyright and other intellectual property, access and security, stakeholders, contract conditions and moral, privacy and confidentiality, business models and licensing. Let us see copyright and other intellectual property rights, IPR. Content owners have copyright on the content that has substantial impact of digital preservation. The IPR issues for digital materials are more complex and significant than for traditional media. If these issues are not addressed, it can hinder or even prevent preservation activities. Simply copying, that is refreshing digital materials onto another medium and encapsulating content and software for emulation, or migrating content to new hardware and software, involve activities that can result in infringement of IPR unless statutory exemptions exist or specific permissions have been obtained from rights holders. As both migration and emulation will involve manipulation and changing presentation and functionality to some degree, it is important to establish a dialogue with rights holders so that they are fully aware of these issues and the actions and rights required to ensure the preservation of selected items are obtained from copyright holders. Access and security. Some of the additional complexity in IPR issues related to the fact that electronic materials are also easily copied and redistributed. Rights holders are therefore particularly concerned with controlling access and potential infringements of copyright. Technology developed to address these concerns and provide copyright measures can also inhibit or prevent actions needed for preservation. These concerns are over access and infringement and preservation need to be understood by organizations preserving digital materials and addressed by both parties in negotiating rights and procedures for preservation. Stakeholders, contract and grant conditions and moral rights. Resources in electronic formats are the result of substantial investment by funding agencies, publishers, individual scholars and authors. Each of these stakeholders may have an interest in preservation. Archiving organizations are required to seek permissions from them to safeguard and maximize the financial investment, intellectual and cultural value of the work for future generations. Such interest may be manifested through contract, license and grant conditions or through statutory provisions such as moral rights for the authors. Privacy and confidentiality. Digital objects are subject to confidentiality. Agreements like Data Protection Act or similar privacy legislation that protects information held on individual. Privacy and confidentiality concerns may impact on how digital materials can be managed within the repository or by third parties and made accessible for use. Business models and licensing. Business models for dissemination of electronic materials and the range of stakeholders who own the IPR has impact on digital preservation. In most cases, subscribers to electronic resources, particularly electronic journals, do not have its physical possession. Subscribers are therefore concerned that publishers consider the archiving and preservation of these works and include in archiving and perpetual access to back issues in licensing of these works. Legal deposits. Legal deposit libraries obviously own major responsibility for digital preservation for documents deposited with them. In UK, the Legal Deposit Libraries Act 2003 is enabling legislation which will be implemented over time by a series of further regulations. UK legal deposit law should over time be extended to cover digital publications as well as their preservations. Usually this law also includes preservations to allow legal deposit libraries to carry out activities necessary to acquire, preserve and make accessible digital publications. Other countries are increasingly extending their legislation. Initially, new laws tended to cover only tangible digital publications, for example magnetic tape, diskettes and optical discs, or so-called static online publications. So with this, let us summarize what we have covered so far in part 1 of digital preservation. The module introduced the digital preservation challenges and problems, defined its scope, need and processes involved, and also elaborated on problems and challenges, factors involved in long-term digital preservation, also discussed about its strategies, impact of intellectual property rights, and finally we also discussed on digital rights management. So that is all. Thank you.